Excellent, sir, whenever you're ready.
Everyone cares about price level. The price level not only depends on supply and demand, but also depends on the price per dollar. As we know, the more money printed, the price of dollar will become relatively lower. Federal Reserve is the institution that decides how much money will be printed. You should listen to me because the purchase power of each dollar in your pocket can be influenced by the Federal Reserve's policies. Today, I will teach you what the Federal Reserve is. First, I will talk about the history of the Federal Reserve. Secondly, I will introduce the structure of the Federal Reserve. Finally, I will analyze how the Federal Reserve influences the US economy. Even though the Federal Reserve, which is also known as the Third Bank of the United States, was built in 1913. There existed the First Bank of the United States and the Second Bank of the United States in American history before the creation of the Federal Reserve. The First Bank of the United States was created in 1791. In 1775, during the Revolutionary War, the Continental government made its first attempt at a national currency, which is called Continentals. The Continentals is a kind of paper money that issued by the Congress, but the Continental only backed by future tax revenues. Even though the Continental once financed the Revolutionary War, but the overprinting as well as the British counterfeiting caused the value of the Continentals diminish quickly. This experience with paper money led the United States realized that a monetary institution should be created to make monetary policies. After that, the government granted the First Bank of the United States at the urging of Alexander Hamilton. However, the charter of the First Bank expired in 1811 under the President James Madison because the Congress refused to renew it. In 1816, the President Madison revived the central banking system in the form of the Second Bank of the United States. The Second Bank of the United States once played a similar role as the First Bank. But years later, after Andrew Jackson, who was opposed to the Federal Reserve's the central banking system, when he was re-elected, he pulled the government's funds out of the bank and completely paid off the national debt. Even though the president of the Second Bank of the United States, Nicholas Biddle, was blamed on Jackson's policy and pressured him to renew the charter of the Second Bank, but he didn't. And the charter of the Second Bank finally expired in 1836. After that, in 1837, from 1837 to 1862, there was no central bank in the United States. This period is also called the era of free banking, in which only state-chartered banks existed, and that banks are regulated by the state government instead of the federal government. The Federal Reserve, which is also called the Third Bank of the United States, was created in 1913. In 1862, to finance the Civil War, the National Banking Act was issued, and that act instituted a series of national banks. As more and more national banks are created, the United States realized that a third central bank should be created to regulate and centralize the banking system. This provides the demand for the creation of the third Bank of the United States. In the last quarter of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, the United States, the U.S. economy went through a series of financial panics. The main motivation for the creation of the third Bank of the United States was the panics of 1907. After deeply studying American and European banking system, the National Commission leader Nelson Eldridge realized that a central banking system is better than a government-issued bond system, and he also thinks that a banking system without the involvement of a government is the best. And after the Democrats won the White House and Congress, the Federal Reserve Act, which is based on Eldridge plan, was issued by the Congress. And after that, the Federal Reserve, or the third Bank of the United States, was created. Next, I will introduce the structure of the Federal Reserve. There are the four main components of the Federal Reserve are the Board of Governors, the Federal Open Committee, the 12 regional reserve banks, and the member banks throughout the country. This is the structure about the Federal Reserve, and this is the relationship between those components. And the 7-member Board of Governors is a federal agency. It is charged with the 12. It is charged with the overseeing of the 12 regional reserve banks and set monetary policies. It also regulates the U.S. banking system. The Federal Open Market Committee is the component that oversees the federal open market operations. There are 12 members. The Federal Open Market Committee consists of 12 members. 7 of them are from the Board of Governors, and 5 of them are the Reserve Bank's presidents. And there are 12 reserve banks there are 12 regional reserve banks in the U.S. And these 12 reserve banks are responsible for their member banks, and these reserve banks are these regional reserve banks have an intermediate legal status with some features of private corporation and some features of public agency. Finally, I will analyze how the Federal Reserve and its monetary policy influence the U.S. economy. After the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 gave the Federal Reserve the authority to make monetary policy, there are 3 major tools for the Federal Reserve to implement the policy. And the first tool is called the government. The first tool is called the discount rate. The discount rate is the rate that charged commercial banks and other depository institutions. The other depository institutions, the fund they receive from the reserve banks, and the Federal Reserve's use the discount rate to influence the U.S. to control the money supply, and to control the money supply and influence the U.S. Economy. And the second component, the second tool is called the reserve requirement. The reserve requirement is the policy that influences the amount of money that depository institution have to hold in reserve, and this policy can can influence the amount of money that will be loaned to the market. And the third tool is called the federal fund rate. The federal fund rate is the rate charged to the the rate banks charge each other for the overnight loans, and the adjustment of the federal fund rate is federal open market operations, and the Federal Reserve can influence the federal fund rate and to influence the U.S. economy. Today, I talked about the Federal Reserve, what the Federal Reserve is. First, I talked about the history of the Federal Reserve. Secondly, I talked about the structure of the Federal Reserve. Finally, I analyzed how the Federal Reserve and its monetary policy influence the U.S. economy. I hope you can learn more from my speech. Thank you.